Hi everyone, it's Kevin, and for the end of season 2 of the Mandalorian, I'm gonna 3D print Mando with the Beskar armor, try to do a base around it. For the start of the season, I've done the Razor Crest already before, you can check the video about it. This one is on Thingiverse from Vallejo. It's a pretty cool model, so let's go. Okay, so here I have all my pieces in G2 box. As you can see, I can barely fit the top part of the model. I had to cut all the limb basically, so both leg, arms, the two part of the gun and the cape. So it's a bit of the pain. I'm gonna have to assemble everything later, but that's the only option. If I want to go a bit taller, and I should be able to. The support were nothing crazy, pretty standard, a lot of them because they're big model, and I hollowed the main part as well. Okay, all the parts are printed and cleaned up already. Let's see what I got. Here on Mando, there was a lot of gap to fill and stuff to sand after. Like everything was separate almost, so it was a bit of a pain. But on a small printer like the Photon, you have to cut the model if you want to go bigger. So that's what I've done on Mando. Here for the base, I've done the same. I've cut my rim around, then I've glued them back together, filled the inside with cardboard. And that's the moisturizer which are gonna go behind the model, so I had to glue the top part here of the moisturizer, but everything else was in one piece, so pretty easy to clean up. Let's prime and let's paint. Okay, let's start with the base. So here I'm just tracing, I make sure I can fit everything the way it was supposed to. Then I start to glue the two moisturizer. I added some pin on the bigger one, just to make sure everything's gonna stick on it. It's cardboard at the bottom, so I just wanted to make sure. I put the mark of the feet of the Mando, make sure it's gonna be on the right place. Here I'm using paint and PVA. I want to have the sand texture going around, so I thought, okay, if I use PVA and paint, it should be okay. But later on, when everything dry, everything kind of flattened out, so I took the milliput and I started like sculpting like some kind of wave around. I really needed like some volume, the PVA was not enough. So here I'm doing some kind of like small wave going around, and then later I'm smoothing out with some water, the dirty paint water. I make sure to avoid where I'm gonna put Mando after. And the effect is pretty fine, like I never sculpt anything, so I'm not really sure of what I'm doing, but here later on I went back and I put some PVA on top. I waited for the milliput to be cured first, and then here I'm applying the sand. After some paint and some PVA, I've mixed some paint and PVA in order to fix the sand to the base and everything. So I had a couple of coats of paint, some PVA as well together. Everything is strong. Here I'm doing the base coat for the two moisturizer. I didn't went back and try to find some picture, but if I remember correctly, they are a bit like kind of beige, brownish, a bit sandy. I think the color was like this, so that's what I choose. I had a couple of like metal parts, here a lot of washes. I'm cleaning some of the pooling. I don't want to have like huge amount of wash in the corner, but I still leave everything kind of dirty. I dry brush on top. It's a pretty like classic terrain style. I'm using the same base coat for the dry brush here. And then later on I go back on my sand. Here I'm applying dualated like kind of sand color. I want to keep the brown showing up a little bit behind. And right now I'm just gonna dry brush a lot of like sandy color on top, some bone color as well on the brighter highlight. And I'm just doing it until I'm happy with the effect. And that's it for the base. Let's go to Mando now. So for Mando, I decide to use all the base coats and then to wash everything. So the plan was to harmonize all the color. As you can see, for example, like the central part, the torso, it's green or bluish in the series, but everything is kind of toned on the same way. So I don't really mind here having the saturation of the color. Even like here the boots, they're kind of really brownish. Same for the cape and everything, but the goal is to separate everything, have my base coat done, and then the wash is gonna tone down everything on the same value, so to speak. And it's gonna weathered as well, like the style of Mondo is a bit dirty. So here I'm going a bit heavy. I've mixed a lot of washes, like black and sepia and stuff like this, just to make it a bit more like, I don't know, brownish, not only black. And when everything was dry, I went back on some parts of the model and applied some highlight. So here I'm on the gray part around the torso and the pants. Everything was a bit too bright, so I went back with some like darker gray, and I've did some blending a little bit. Nothing super fancy, but just to try to make it a bit better. I've done it the same for the green part and everything. Trying to clean up the mess of the wash and make it a bit more interesting. Same for the leather part here, all the belt, around the torso, the hips and the boots. And I could even add some shine to the metal parts. Everything was kind of toned down, and I took a really bright silver and I did some highlight. For the cape I choose to dry brush over. It's pretty good because the surface it's quite huge, and it's gonna give some texture as well to the cape, more like a cloth texture rather than going with some like glaze or wet blending over. And when all my parts were done, I started with the armor. So here I'm using the Dyalla black, glossy black. Basically it's the primer before you apply the chrome effect. So this paint is a bit tricky, you'll need to use it with an airbrush, but here I'm going with the brush. When you start using it, it's pretty flowing quite quickly, but later on it's getting thick and it's hard to work with. When everything was like sort of dry, I applied my chrome effect. So here the first base coat, they are really like toned down. You really have to go 3 or 4 base coat to have a really nice cover, a bright chrome effect. And this paint is really funny, like it's like alcohol base I think, and all the pigment are always floating around and running everywhere. So it's a bit tricky to apply. And when everything starts to dry, all the like defects are popping out, which is a bit annoying, but that's part of the deal. And after I was done with the Beskar armor, I went back and glue Mondo on my base. Here for the end, I'm just applying a little bit of like pigment around for the sand. The final touch. And here I have it, I'm finally done with Mondo. So this one was a lot of new stuff to try again, trying to sculpt the sand, trying to get the effect, and the paint was pretty fun. Same to blend the color with the washes. I used the Dyalla gloss black and the chrome effect on top. Those two paints, they are meant to be used with an airbrush, and I knew the render was going to be a bit like shady with the brush. The end result is okay, so what I mean, the light reflecting around is working, so that's what I wanted, but obviously the render and the surface, nothing is smooth, nothing is perfect. That's what you get when they told you like you need to use an airbrush, you have to. I went ahead and I did it with the brush anyway, but that's fine. I'm always okay to try stuff and mess up and do better next time, so if one day I get an airbrush, I will be able to do some chrome effect as well. So that's it for Mondo. I enjoyed doing it. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to see more, subscribe to the channel and see you next week. Bye.